Today we are going to talk about one of my pet peeves, and that is the phrase, show, don't tell. And the reason I hate this phrase so much is because I have seen more writers screw up their memoirs by following this advice more than any other bit of advice that writers are often given. So stay tuned, and we're going to talk about how to really interpret this phrase and what it really means. Before we get into it, I want to start with a quiz. If you've watched my videos, if you know me, you know I love my quizzes. So what I want to do is I want to give you examples, 3 writing samples. And some of them are showing, I will tell you in advance, some of them are showing, some of them are telling. I don't want you to ask yourself yet whether each example is showing or telling. What I want you to ask yourself is, does this writing work? Would I read this in a memoir? Do I like this writing? So it's a pretty easy quiz. Just ask yourself, do I like this writing? So here is the first sample. Nita was angry. Okay, there we have an example of telling. What I'm asking you is, do you like this writing? Do you think it's good writing? So on to the second one. I hate you, screamed Nita, throwing a jar of grape jam against the wall, which shattered on the floor with a crash. Okay, there we have an example of showing. Do you like this writing is the question you have to ask yourself. I'm going to give you a third example. I could tell Nita was mad, but I also knew that this anger would fade. An hour from now, she would curl up with me on the couch and offer me warm buttered popcorn as an apology. But for now, I had to let her rage. Otherwise, it would seep and fester, and she would wind up giving me the silent treatment for days. Okay, there's an example of telling. Again, ask yourself, do you like this writing? I would argue that yes, but what I want you to notice is that there is no showing going on here. There is nothing visual. You are coming right out and telling your reader about Nita's anger. But why does this work? So number 3 is my favorite, but it's really an example of telling. So how is it that this writing that is doing nothing but telling working better than example number 2, which is merely showing? In order for you to understand the answer to this, I have to talk to you a little bit about internal versus external writing. And that's really what we're going to get into today. Internal writing is always stronger than external writing. Internal writing is always going to be stronger than external writing. It's always going to be much more entertaining to read, and it's going to affect your reader emotionally. External writing is generally objective writing. It's if you were an observer and you were describing what happened to another person, it's what you had seen that day, right? It's basically what you saw, what you heard. It's often sensory writing. Sensory writing is often external. It's what you heard, what you saw. It's quite objective. Internal writing, on the other hand, is what you would have thought at the time. So all of this experience is colored by your subjective point of view. So you're not giving an objective account to another person of what you saw that day. Rather, you're interpreting what you saw. And this makes for great writing. This is what great prose writers do, whether it's fiction or whether it's memoir writing. They put us inside the narrator's head. And this is what makes your prose affecting to a reader. This is how to affect them emotionally, which is what you want to do anyway. That's the goal in having a reader read your memoir. You want them to have an emotional experience. So let's go back to these writing samples. Number 1, Nita was angry. Okay, it's very external. There's nothing to interpret here, right? There's no subjectivity. You're telling me, and it's an example of external writing. What about number 2? Well, here you get a visual. You get Nita. We see why she's angry. We get a visual. This is showing, definitely not telling. She throws the grape jam against the wall. So you're showing me her anger. However, it's still very external. This is how any person who witnessed this would interpret Nita's anger. Now let's look at number 3. Here you have no showing, it's completely telling, but it's internal. We're getting an interpretation of Nita's anger, and I think it makes the writing much more interesting, much more emotionally affecting. So instead of just seeing, really, the difference here is that people really do express their anger in a different way. Anyone can throw a jar of jelly against the wall. But what makes them different is the reason for that anger, the way they express it, the way they get over it. That is so much more interesting than just seeing someone angry, than just showing us that your character is angry. So ideally, you will actually combine number 2 and number 3. If I had to choose just one, I would pick number 3. If I got to only put one of these in my book, number 3 is the one I would choose. However, you don't have to pick just one. What I would actually do in writing my memoir is I would include 2 and 3. So I'd have this quick visual of Nita's rage and her throwing grape jam against the wall. And then I would also interpret that rage so that your reader is really affected emotionally and that we really understand Nita's rage. She's not just an angry person. There's a lot going on underneath this anger. So the next time someone says to you, show, don't tell them they have no idea what they're talking about. And you're going to tell them exactly why. My name is Wendy Dale. I'm the creator of Memoir Writing for Geniuses. If you would like a free class, there's a link right below this video. Take care, guys. Happy writing.